A lot of people already calling in this morning, very, very upset with what's happened. They make the point, that, as you did, about these advisors. They're not cheap advisors. They're well-paid advisors, over £100,000 a year by the taxpayer, by the way. It just seems incredible to me. Do you think this could be the Gordon Brown moment?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, what's also so sad about this, Mike, and we were discussing this when I was in to do a paper review, is that this is probably one of the last opportunities to have those who survived D-Day, who came through that ferocious battle and made it back, to actually be there and commemorate what was a moment that has secured the freedom of Western Europe and the Western world ever since.
Yeah.
And, you know, there's not going to be a 90th anniversary when we have the veterans there, is there? Because so many of them are at their 100th birthday. There might be one or two if we're very, very lucky.
Yeah.
And Rishi Sunak and his advisors didn't understand the gravity. It's not rocket science.
Right.
It really isn't rocket science. You look at the list of people who are attending. You've got the President of the United States. You've got the Chancellor of Germany. You've got the President of France, right? You look at that list and you go, I think I better make sure that the Prime Minister's there.
Yeah.
I think
and
this
the
is really
King, by the
important,
way,
especially
and
what's going on in
the
Eastern.
and the future
and the King. And it's like, yeah, and the future King, like all of the A-list, all of the A principals are there. It's really not that difficult. You make sure that the Prime Minister's there, and you just take a day off from the run-of-the-mill campaigning, right. and like I said, they're paid a lot of money, and it just the anger, especially on the Tory side, is that Rishi Sunak can't afford to make these really bad mistakes.
No,
he's already under pressure, and especially with this caucus of there will be some young folk, right? Let's make no bones about it, who simply don't get the importance of D-Day. They just don't understand it, and they'll make some silly remark on social media or whatever. They don't understand it. But for most of us, and most of your listeners, Mike, they really get it. They really understand the significance of D-Day, and they want our Prime Minister there, whether they vote Labour, Tory, whoever. They understand the importance of this, and Tories understand the importance of this. And in fact, to be fair to Labour, Keir Starmer understood.
Well, he was there, wasn't he? He was also there.
And he was there. And it shouldn't. Let's not turn it. I mean, he calls it. Labour have called it a dereliction of duty, and it's almost. This transcends the party political jives where you hand an opportunity to Keir Starmer. Take Labour out of it just for a moment. Rishi Sunak, as the Prime Minister of this country, should have been there, and he should have been on the stage with Emmanuel Macron and Joe Biden and Olaf Scholz. He should have been, we saw that picture with Volodymyr Zelensky meeting that veteran, and they were thanking each other for saving Europe. It was a moment, wasn't it?
Yeah.
He should have been there. Prime Minister should have been there. Maybe not trying to mimic what Volodymyr Zelensky is doing, as he is the president of Ukraine, but he should have been spending more time. And there was a moment when he was meeting one of and you're showing the pictures now, but he missed the important bit with the leaders of the free world.
Yeah, exactly right. And tonight, of course, the big debate, the seven, I don't know what we're calling it, the top seven or the magnificent seven or whatever it is. Penny Mordaunt, who's a Royal Naval Reservist, who's very, very hot on all matters to do with the military, is going to be there. What do you think she's going to have to say for herself? Because Nigel Farage is going to be there as well.
Yes, I mean, it's going to be a difficult one for Penny Mordaunt, and she's going to get lots and lots of questions about it, of course. And I'm sure Angela Rayner will be making some points as well. Nigel Farage is, of course, the main event of this of this. Well, it's not even a leaders' debate, is it? It's sort of senior figures debate, and it's going to be the pressure on immigration and what can Penny Mordaunt say? And of course, there are going to be Tories who are watching this who are thinking, actually, if Penny performs so much better, should we have actually just got rid of Rishi Sunak a bit earlier and got her to lead us into the general election? I think there'll be some who are sort of a little bit sort of like, oh, we've missed our moment, and now we're facing this annihilation at the general election because we allowed the wrong bloke to lead us into battle.
Yes.
And it'll be a chance, okay, it'll be Nigel Farage, but Penny Mordaunt comes back with some really strong responses to Nigel Farage. If she actually puts up a really decent fight, then there's going to be a huge amount of frustration that Rishi Sunak is still in charge, and actually the Tories, right under their noses, had somebody who could have at least put up something of a better fight against Nigel Farage and reform. So it's going to be fascinating to watch, and of course it takes on that added importance because Nigel Farage has since said that he's actually going to stand in Clacton.
Right, indeed. And let's just talk about what Labour are doing, because a big piece of the Telegraph today on the front page, Sir Keir Starmer saying that Labour's manifesto will offer the opportunity for Palestine to be recognised as a state. But listen to this from Dave, who's trucking near Salford. He says, Ray, the Labour Party's recognition of a Palestinian state. Where and which borders are they recognising? If they're including the land of the West Bank, then they believe the Israelis currently living there aren't in Israel. Madness. I mean, the problem here is basically Labour is saying we will recognise a Palestinian state regardless of a peace deal, regardless of anything else. So almost as though they're kind of echoing what Angela Rayner said all those days ago up in the north of England with that group of Muslim brethren.
Yes, Mike, it's seen, I think, as a sop to the left of the Labour Party, this decision to recognise the state of Palestine in the manifesto. Let's look at the wording. I mean, Starmer has come under a huge amount of criticism from the left of the party for his stance on the conflict in the Middle East. He got himself in all sorts of trouble at the beginning of the conflict, immediately following what happened on October the 7th, because he said that actually Israel had a right to cut off water and electricity from Gaza as a way of defending itself. So he has actually been seen by the left as being particularly hawkish on the conflict in the Middle East. But clearly there's a problem with Muslim voters who would like to vote Labour, but who are looking towards the Greens or looking towards George Galloway's party because they don't like Keir Starmer's stance or haven't liked Keir Starmer's stance on Israel. And Labour, the thinking is, by doing this in the manifesto, is saying to those voters, and not just Muslim voters, by the way, beyond, who are concerned about Labour's stance on Israel and Palestine, saying, listen, here's something that shows that actually we would like you to come back to us. But of course, Mike, that does raise questions about where Keir Starmer would position the party if he becomes Prime Minister, and where he position the UK government if he becomes Prime Minister in trying to resolve the conflict.
Yeah, exactly right. And just one final thing, I suppose. The subject on the front page of the I newspaper this morning, reform surges again as new polls show the Farage effect. It looks as though the Tories are down to 23%. Labour's got 42% in this new poll, which is from BMG. Reform on 16%. The Lib Dems on 9%. The Greens on 6%. They've got a problem in the Times this morning with some of their candidates. Apparently as many as 20 of their candidates being looked at for possible anti-Semitic posts and anti-Semitic tropes and that kind of thing. So there's a lot of seats up for grabs here.
Yes, I think what's the interesting thing about the polls at the moment, and we had it with YouGov to start off with, and then we had it with Redfield and Winton as well, is that shrinking gap now in those two polls down to 2 points. Salvation had it as slightly larger at 8 points between the Tories and Reform. That's what's getting the Conservatives nervous. People within the party think it's actually going to get worse, and could we end up in a situation? I think it's actually probably quite likely that we're going to end up in a situation if we can continue to see this trend now that Nigel Farage has said that he's standing, where actually Reform, in terms of the popular vote, overtakes the Conservative Party in the polls. And I think if and when that happens, I think that's going to be quite a seismic moment, and we could really expect at that point that Tory MPs who are particularly vulnerable to reform, but actually share some of Nigel Farage's views about the direction of which right-wing politics should be going in this country. At that point, do they decide to defect, or do they try and come together and form some sort of deal with Nigel Farage? Because this situation for the Conservatives is only becoming more acute. You've seen what Nadine Dorries has been saying, former culture secretary who, of course, worked for, who was culture secretary for Boris Johnson, has been a critic of Rishi Sunak. She's saying, warning that the Conservatives could all but disappear after this election. So I think there is possibly a reckoning still to be had. The Nigel Farage effect doesn't end this week. It's going to continue right up until polling day.
Yes, indeed. We'll bring you all the details, of course, of that debate coming up later on tonight. The Magnificent Seven, you might call them. But Penny Mordaunt's going to have some interesting things to say, I'm sure. But of course, Nigel Farage is standing, as you heard, in Clacton. So we're going to give you the rest of the candidates who are going to be standing in that seat as well. You've got Matthew Bensalem from the Liberal Democrats, Nigel Farage, of course, Reform UK, Natasha Osborne from the Green Party, Jovan Owusu Nepal from Labour, and Giles Watling, I should say, from the Conservative and Unionist Party.